Good evening, esteemed guests. Will you please rise while the procession enters the hall? Join the UWC Creative Arts Choir as they sing the national anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. This afternoon, as I was preparing my script for this evening, I struggled with how to address you. And I didn't know if it was any more appropriate to say, ladies and gentlemen. Because in this day and age, we do not believe in such binary gendering, do we? So I thought I would rather go with esteemed guests and say, good evening, esteemed guests, and all pronouns observed. It was in 2021, under the direction of Professor Pretorius, our Rector and Vice Chancellor, that UWC decided to honor and to recognize recipients of honorary doctorates and gold medals at a special ceremony. The first such event was successfully held in 2022. And having decided to conduct this biennially, we now gather to pay tribute to those incredible individuals who were nominated in 2023 and this year. Kindly join me in inviting Professor Pretorius to the stage to officially welcome you.
I know I'm stepping down at the end of this year, but the registrar, that does not mean that I need a ramp. I can still use the stairs. Chancellor Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, distinguished guests, members of the executive and deans, the Consul General of Belgium, Nicolas Vierens Gevaert, the Deputy General Representative for Flanders, Dr. Nicholas van der Vyver, South Africa's Deputy Ambassador to Japan, Mr. Khalid, or Ambassador Khalid Jeppe, Chairperson of the University Council, Ms. Koliswa Mpongoshi, and all other members of Council present, Vice-Chancellor and Rector-designate, Professor Robert Balfour, Acting President of the SRC, Siyabonga Sigudla, and all SRC members present, colleagues and students. I'm sure I haven't left anyone out. And of course, those that brought us here tonight and those that we are honoring. It's been a bittersweet week for the University of the Western Cape. The week started with the loss of our beloved former Vice-Chancellor, Professor Brian O'Connell, who remained involved in the activities of the university even after he had stepped down. Then on Tuesday, we went to the airport to welcome back our very successful women's football team, who won the COSAFA Women's Champions League, and it had me a little bit ambivalent because their trip to Malawi cost more than R1 million, and now that they won the COSAFA Cup, they will be representing us in Morocco towards the end of the year. So my ambivalence was, if Malawi was 1 million, what is Morocco? Tonight we celebrate the 2024 honorary doctorates and the Gold Medal Award. To everyone here, your presence this evening adds to the special significance of this prestigious celebration, as we honor the exceptional accomplishment and achievements of the awardees. Before we proceed, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Nita Lawton-Misra, our registrar, and a team for the tireless efforts in organizing this event. Registrar, your hard work and meticulous planning have made this celebration possible, and we are truly grateful for all that you and your team have done to bring this event to life. Our sincere gratitude also goes to our award recipients tonight. Your contributions in areas that align so closely with the core values of UWC, whether in teaching and learning or in service to the community, have not gone unnoticed. It is your untiring passion, it is your excellence that have brought us together to recognize and celebrate your outstanding work. We honor you not for your achievements, but for the lasting impact you have had on our institution and the broader community. It is through your efforts that we continue to uphold the values of excellence and service that define the University of the Western Cape. These awardees tonight serve as inspiration of reminders of what is possible when we dedicate ourselves to our chosen paths. This is only the second time that UWC has hosted an event specifically dedicated to recognizing and awarding honorary doctorates and gold medals. In the past, these honors were conferred during our normal graduation ceremonies. However, I've always heard the complaint from our students that having such an illustrious and esteemed person present at the graduation takes a bit of the shine of their own achievements. And we decided we want to elevate the process by hosting a gala event. We want to make a statement that we value excellence and that we do not accept mediocrity. Celebrating in this way enables us to focus solely on celebrating these extraordinary contributions in a fitting manner. You will experience tonight that in the way that this event is arranged, that we will also get to hear a little bit more about the awardees, the defining moments in their lives, and it has just a very personal, all-round feel to it, which is not possible in a graduation ceremony. As we continue with our program this evening, let's remember that the achievements we celebrate are not just the culmination of hard work. It is the beginning of new opportunities to make a difference to our world. On behalf of the entire university community, I congratulate all our awardees tonight, and may you continue to inspire and lead as you embark on the next chapter of your life. Given his passion for education and the extent to which he valued excellence, Professor Brian O'Connell would have been here tonight to enjoy the event as he did in 2022. I thank you.
When one speaks of UWC, it cannot be done without thinking of the significant role that the late Professor Brian O'Connell played in shaping the institution to reach the heights it has and continues to reach. It is with deep sadness that we acknowledge Professor Brian O'Connell's passing this week. To this end, I invite you to remember this giant of a man by observing a moment's silence, please. Thank you. Professor Tyrone Pretorius will now light a candle in memory of Professor O'Connell.
The journey of Professor Tyrone Pretorius, the 7th Rector and Vice-Chancellor of the University of the Western Cape, is one of perseverance. His dedication and vision transformed an institution, leaving an indelible mark on South African higher education. His story begins in the small town of Sterkspruit in the former Transkei before moving to King Williamstown. Raised in a close-knit rural community, he learned the values of family, friendship, and social justice. These early years, far removed from modern luxuries, would shape the man and the leader he was to become. As a young man, Prof. Pretorius pursued an academic career with a determination to make a difference. He became a qualified psychologist, earning 2 doctorates, one from the University of the Western Cape and another from the University of the Free State. His leadership skills were further refined through prestigious programs at Yale and Oxford universities. Prof. Pretorius' career at UWC spans over 3 decades. He began as an academic assistant and rose through the ranks to become a lecturer, senior lecturer, associate professor, professor, head of department, dean of the Faculty of Community and Health Sciences, and DVC academic. In 2015, he was appointed as the rector and vice-chancellor.
I would make so bold as to say that on multiple levels of eligibility, no one deserves this appointment more than Professor Pretorius.
In his inaugural speech, Prof. Pretorius outlined a bold vision for UWC, one centered on research-led learning, community engagement, and strengthening international partnerships.
I truly stand on the shoulders of giants, and I feel somewhat daunted by the prospect of having to follow in the footsteps of these extraordinary people. Society has entrusted me and you with a special university. It is our duty to future generations to pass on this gift in an even better state than it was in when we received it.
Over the next decade, he would not only fulfill these promises but exceed them, guiding UWC to new heights. Under his leadership, UWC experienced unprecedented growth, particularly in research. The university consistently ranked among South Africa's top institutions for research output and impact. Prof. Pretorius fostered a culture of academic excellence, attracting scholars from around the world, and established key international partnerships, extending UWC's global reach.
My vision is one of alliances between North and South, between North, South, and East. And we're already talking to one of our partners in Belgium to see if we can have a trilateral alliance. Alliance means that we have common goals, we have a common vision, and we draw on the strengths of our respective institutions to make those goals a reality.
The fact that this relationship has endured for 30 years when there have been changes in leadership both at the University of Western Cape, at the University of Missouri. We've had different presidents, lots of different chancellors, and yet there has been a continued sustained willingness to participate in this partnership.
there have been so many accomplishments, whether you think in terms of individual partnerships or institution-to-institution partnerships. I mean, let me put it this way. More UMSL faculty members have visited the University of the Western Cape than any other university in the world.
Prof. Pretorius' contributions extend far beyond the academic realm. He spearheaded initiatives that connected UWC with the surrounding communities, recognizing the university's role as an anchor institution in the region. His efforts to improve educational outcomes in underserved communities have made a lasting impact, championing access and inclusivity.
I officially declare the Science Learning Center at Sitimbile Matiso School formally open.
What truly sets Prof. Pretorius apart is his humanity. Known for his compassionate approach, he has always placed the well-being of students and staff first. During challenging times like the Fees Must Fall protests, the Cape Town water crisis, and the COVID-19 pandemic, his leadership remains steadfast, always prioritizing the needs of the UWC community. To those who know him, Professor Pretorius is more than just a leader. He is a mentor, a guide, and a tireless advocate for equity and justice. As we reflect on Prof. Pretorius' remarkable career, we are reminded of the profound impact that one individual can have through determination, vision, and a genuine desire to make a difference. Professor Tyrone Pretorius, thank you for your unwavering dedication and for showing us that true leadership is about serving others with integrity and heart.
Thank you, everyone. Shall we take this debate outside? Yes, it may not be about you, Prof. Pretorius, but this evening would not have taken the format it has if it wasn't for you. So, and let me tell you something about Prof. Pretorius. At every meeting these days, we are so bored with this line, "This is my last meeting. This is my last meeting." So here's a tribute to all the lasts, Prof. Pretorius. UWC has always been associated with individuals of stature and eminence, an eminence. One such person is our Chancellor, Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, whom I would like to invite to the podium now to address you. Archbishop Makgoba, please.
Prof. Tyrone, let me underscore what the program director, Dr. Nita Lawson-Misra, has said. You deserve it. And Imbongi doesn't just stand. They feel it in their heart, and they testify to what has actually happened. So we want to say, once again, congratulations. Let's give Prof. Tyrone a round of applause, please. Vice Chancellor and Program Director, Dr. Nita Lawton-Misra. Let me stand on the protocol that the Vice Chancellor outlined for us this evening, and to also thank you for that moment of silence for Professor O'Connell, whose loss we deeply mourn. He played an excellent role as Vice Chancellor, and I'm pleased to see the recognition of this reflected in the many tributes that have been paid to him in recent days. Tomorrow he will be buried from a parish in District 6, and I want to underscore the message of condolence that the university has sent to his family, and pray that he may rest in peace and rise in glory. So dear friends, welcome everyone to this function at which we at UWC recognize the distinguished service above and beyond the call of duty of a remarkable group of leaders in the fields of law, education, culture, and to society more broadly. It is a privilege for me as Chancellor to represent UWC this evening, and I want to say to each of you, to Justice Moseneke, Justice Sachs, Dr. Zotwana, President Choy, and to those representing Professor Caroline Pauwels and Chris Hani, that it is you who honor us as a university by your presence and your agreement to allow UWC to recognize these extraordinary contributions to our and other societies. When I address our annual graduation ceremonies, I tell the graduates that as they go out into the world, their success in their studies should be a source of pride not only in their own achievements in graduating, but because UWC offers them an education of high quality of which to be proud. Your willingness as our honorees to receive these accolades from us adds to the distinction all our graduates enjoy as beneficiaries of this institution. I also ask graduates to remember that the spirit of Ubuntu is at the heart of UWC, that our humanity is interconnected, and we are at our best when we work together for the greater good. I tell them that they are not just graduates of a university, but ambassadors of a shared mission to create a more just and equitable world. Again, there could not be a more powerful affirmation of this mission than the willingness of yourselves to be recognized by our gold medal and honorary degrees. So thank you again for your presence. Thank you everyone for coming out in a relatively cold night, but somebody from Belgium told me that they know the real cold, so I mustn't complain tonight. And as we celebrate, let us remember in our thoughts and prayers, in our societies and others who are cold or hungry tonight. Remember also the victims of violence, whether domestic violence or the violence of oppression and war, whether that violence occurs in South Africa, Sudan, the Sahel, Gaza, occupied West Bank, the Cape Flats, Israel, or elsewhere. And so God bless you and enjoy this evening. I thank you.
I'd like to invite the UWC Creative Arts Choir to join us on stage now for a short while. Hands together for them, please. Thank you. You have to agree, UWC simply oozes talent. A huge round of applause as they leave. Thank you very much, guests. We will now begin with the conferral of the honorary doctorates on 3 individuals who were nominated in 2023 in alphabetical order. So I'd like to call upon the Rector and the Chancellor to join me on stage, please. So one cannot think of South Africa's history without remembering the pivotal role that the late Chris Hani played in our struggle for freedom. To receive the award on behalf of the Hani family, I invite Ms. Lindiwe Hani, the daughter of the late Chris Tempisila Hani, to please join us on stage.
The University of the Western Cape is privileged to bestow the degree of honoris causa posthumously on the late Martin Tempisile, affectionately remembered as Chris Hani. We do so in recognition of his lifetime contribution to the anti-apartheid struggle, his deep affinity with the struggles of the poor and the working class, and the influence he continues to make 3 decades after his assassination on 10 April 1993, a dark day in our history. Chris Hani was born in June 1942 in Xofimvaba in the Eastern Cape. He attended Lovedale School, where he developed a love for Latin, Greek, and English literature, which he later studied at the University of Fort Hare and Rhodes University, where he graduated with a BA degree in English and Latin. After university, he moved to Cape Town to pursue a legal career. But as he recalled in an interview with Patriarch O'Malley in 1993, I could have been a lawyer, I could have been a teacher, I could have been anything. But then there was that overriding passion of participation in the struggle against white domination. He was an activist from an early age, having joined the African National Congress Youth League while still at school. He joined the South African Communist Party in 1961 and Umkhonto weSizwe a year later, rising rapidly to the leadership ranks of both structures. Following arrest in 1963 under the Suppression of Communism Act, he went into exile, where his reputation as a disciplined and fearless fighter grew. It would be 3 decades before he could return to South Africa, following the unbanning of the African National Congress, South African Communist Party, and other organizations in 1990. Soon after, he was elected Secretary General of the South African Communist Party, a position which he held until his assassination. His untimely passing had a profound impact on people across the political spectrum, attesting to his reputation as a role model of generations of activists and to his outstanding contribution to the making of democracy in South Africa. Nelson Mandela, speaking at Mr. Chris Hani's funeral in 1993, summed up his impact when he described the qualities that made Chris Hani a comrade, a friend, and a confidant. We worked together in the National Executive Committee of the ANC. We had vigorous debates and an intense exchange of ideas. You were completely unafraid. No task was too small for you to perform. Your ready smile and warm friendship were a source of strength and companionship. You lived in my home, and I loved you like the true son you were. In our heart, as in the heart of all our people, you are irreplaceable. We have been struck a blow that wounds so deeply that the scars will remain forever. You laid down your life so that we may know freedom. No greater sacrifice is possible. Many honors have been bestowed on Mr. Chris Hani, including the naming of the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital and the Chris Hani District Municipality in the Eastern Cape. In his memory, he is also the recipient of several orders. The University of the Western Cape, in turn, is proud to honor Chris Hani, a fearless advocate for economic and social justice.
Remember to call at my grave when freedom finally walks the land, so that I may arise to tread familiar paths, to see broken chains, fallen prejudice, forgotten injury, pardoned pains. And when my eyes have filled their sight, do not run away for fright if I crumble to dust again. It will only be the bliss of a long-awaited dream that bids me rest when freedom finally walks the land.
Thank you, Lindiwe. Our next recipient, a very close friend to UWC, Justice Moseneke, is a stalwart who requires no introduction. Justice Moseneke, UWC may be one of the last universities to confer an honorary doctorate on you. It is deliberately so. We had to save the best for last. Justice Moseneke, please join us on stage. Thank you.
Former Deputy Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court, Dikgang Moseneke, has had a highly successful career in law, politics, and the corporate world. Justice Moseneke rose from the humble position of attorney's clerk to that of Deputy Chief Justice. Apart from serving society as attorney, advocate, senior counsel, acting judge, judge in the High Court, and Justice of the Constitutional Court, he also served in other important capacities, such as on the technical committee that drafted the interim constitution, and as Deputy Chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission for the first democratic elections. Justice Moseneke was during his time on the bench the author of numerous court judgments, and he is also the author of a number of important journal articles and 2 books, all of which have become the subject of scholarly debate in local and international academic journals. His judgments and publications show that he was not only a brilliant lawyer, but also a major advocate of the values and principles of social justice, dignity, equality, democracy, separation of powers, and the rule of law. Justice Moseneke has been the recipient of many awards and honors. One of these is the 2020 Bulge Prize for the Rule of Law. David F. Levi, director of the Bulge Judicial Institute, said the following about Justice Moseneke in awarding the prize. Through his example and his writing, he has helped us understand that the ideal of the rule of law must be more than a system of rules and adherence to them, a threshold that apartheid met. Instead, Justice Moseneke has articulated an understanding of the rule of law as a legal system that defends individual rights and freedoms, that pursues social justice, and that in content and spirit advances democratic principles and human dignity. That vision transforms South Africa and offers a beacon to nations around the world where the rule of law has not taken hold or has not yet lived up to its ideal. Justice Moseneke has for many years had a strong relationship with UWC, first as extraordinary professor and more recently as honorary professor. In 2018, Justice Moseneke donated the fees he received for chairing the arbitration into the Life Esidimeni tragedy to the UWC Law faculty. The faculty is allowed to use the interest generated for the purpose of promoting excellence, and a UWC student pursuing postgraduate studies annually benefits from Justice Moseneke's generosity.
Thank you, Justice Moseneke. Living in a country where indigenous languages were relegated to the margins, our next guest played a core role in righting this wrong by shaping language policy and education. Please put your hands together as we welcome Dr. Zotwana to the stage.
Dr. Sidney Zanemfula Zotwana. He dedicated most of his life serving the nation through education and stewardship in a multitude of capacities. From teaching at various schools in the Orange Free State, Eastern Cape, and the Western Cape, assuming the role of deputy headmaster and in other capacities also being the headmaster at various intervals. With intellect and imagination, he pursued further studies at universities such as Forte University, where he obtained his BA degree in 1970 and went on to do an honors degree at Rhodes at UNISA in 1988. He completed his master's degree at the University of Cape Town in 1980. In his early life, learned to move between realms of history, Latin, and language teaching, his home discipline, and philosophy. In unflinching prose, as an intellectual, author, and academic, he explored themes of politics and social disorder depicted in one of his books. He has been able to masterfully combine linguistic analysis with context-driven language acquisition. At a time when the scientific world relegated African languages to the periphery of subjects, Dr. Zotwana has been able to demystify the intricacies of syntax. We ought not to forget that Dr. Zotwana is a revolutionary pioneer in the field of translation, having been the first person in South Africa to be sworn in as a translator for the isiXhosa language before the advent of democracy. It is against this background that the African Language Studies Department saw it fit to nominate Dr. Sydney Zanemvula Zotwana for an Honorary Doctorate Award.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Zotwana. We have a short musical interlude before we continue with the 2024 recipients. I'd like to call Mr. Ezra Lingveld. Are you here? There you go. Thank you. guests, we would like to continue, please, with the 2024 nominations. We will now confer honorary doctorates and a gold medal on 3 individuals who were nominated in 2024 in alphabetical order. The first one, the Missouri System of Universities, has a long history, in fact, close on to 38 years of partnering with UWC. Professor or President Mun Choy from Missouri, who I am hoping has recovered from his jet lag, is now invited to the stage, please.
Dr. Mun Choy became the 24th president of the University of Missouri in 2017, serving the dual role of Chancellor of the university and President of the Missouri system. Mun was the eldest of 4 children to Korean parents when Korea was among the poorest countries in the world based on GDP. Choy grew up in Chicago and graduated from Princeton University with MA and PhD degrees in mechanical and aerospace engineering. He's the recipient of numerous awards, including a Doctorate of Science honoris causa from Pohang Institute of Science and Technology in 2019. He was elected a Fellow of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers in 2012. Dr. Choy assumed the role of President of the Missouri system and later also as Chancellor. He believes firmly in the value of diversity and the need to address injustice. He focused on building Missouri's stature as a land-grant flagship research university. Central to this was the launch in 2021 of Mizzou Forward, a $1.5 billion 10-year investment in faculty excellence, student success, and modern infrastructure. From the outset, President Choy has proven to be an enthusiastic and committed supporter of the long-standing UM-UWC partnership. The UWC-UM partnership dates back to the anti-apartheid struggles of the mid-1980s, when, among others, student protesters across the USA called on the institutions to divest their funds from corporations doing business in South Africa. Given his support for UWC and his role in strengthening the University of Missouri, including its reputation and standing as a leading land-grant flagship research university, President Choy would be a worthy recipient of an honorary doctorate from UWC.
The University of the Western Cape enjoys a very close relationship with the University of Missouri and all its campuses. Since the inception of the partnership with the University of Missouri, there have been more international exchanges of staff and students with all the Missouri campuses, the Mizzou campuses, than any other university in the world. This is an apt recognition of the leadership and the belief and investment in the people of South Africa, and particularly the people of UWC.
Congratulations. Thank you, Professor Choy. Like with Missouri, UWC has also had decades-long relations with the Freie University of Brussels. The late Professor Caroline Pauwels, former rector of VUB, will forever be known for her humanity and humility. Unfortunately, Professor Pauwels' children could not join us for this event. Professor Romain Musen from the University of VUB will receive Professor Pauwels' certificate on behalf of VUB. Professor Musen, please.
The bestowal of an honorary doctorate posthumously on Professor Caroline Pauwels is made in recognition of her distinguished thought leadership in higher education and her academic contribution to the field of information and communication sciences. Professor Pauwels' professional and academic career spanned almost 3 decades. She was awarded the Franke Chair by Ghent University and also held the Jean Monnet Chair. At VUB, she was the director of the influential research group Studies in Media, Innovation and Technologies from 2000 to 2016, at a time when the relationship with UWC evolved. In 2016, she was appointed rector of VUB. During her second term of office, she was diagnosed with cancer, causing her to step down from the position in February 2022. As rector, Caroline's inspirational leader style fostered innovation and strong ties with local and international partners. She drew on the motto, "Break down the walls," as a metaphorical sledgehammer to break down barriers and bring people together. Caroline passed away in August 2022, leaving a remarkable legacy. She will be remembered as an active campaigner for social justice, fairness, and inclusion, and a caring individual. Her life's work continues to be a source of encouragement and validation to researchers and leaders who seek to pursue the ideals which she stood for to make a difference in society. As a leader, scholar, and public intellectual, Caroline positively impacted on the lives of individuals and communities in ways that extended to the sustainable well-being of society as a whole.
Thank you, Prof. Musen. Guests, the gold medal for 2024. Justice Albie Sachs receives a gold medal from UWC. He previously received an honorary doctorate from the university and was nominated this year for a gold medal in recognition of his valor during the struggle and his work in the legal field. I'd like to call upon Justice Sachs to please join us on stage.
the year 2004, the University of the Western Cape awarded an honorary doctorate in letters to Albert Louis, better known as Albie Sachs. Albie was then about to turn 70 and a sitting justice on the Constitutional Court of South Africa. Albie is preparing to celebrate his 90th birthday in January 2025. Albie spent the years between 2004 and 2009 serving out his term on the Constitutional Court. During this period, he wrote some of his most celebrated and widely cited judgments, recognizing, amongst other, the right of same-sex couples to get married, the right of the public to be directly involved in parliamentary lawmaking, and the right of unlawful occupiers to meaningful engagement before their eviction. Widely celebrated around the world as one of the great progressive justices of our era. Albie has been awarded honorary doctorates from at least 20 universities around the globe. He is the recipient of presidential awards from South Africa, Portugal, and France. The Clooney Foundation for Justice instituted an award for courageous justice defenders around the world, called the Albies, and Albie received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Michelle Obama at the inaugural event in 2022. In the 15 years since Albie left the court, he has published 3 books in which he continued to clarify and defend the ideal of transformative constitutionalism. Albie has remained involved in the teaching and research projects of the law faculty at the University of the Western Cape. He continues to teach annually in the Missouri Study Abroad program. He recently wrote the following: "Unlike transition, transformation never ends. Our society needs constant renewal. It is we the people who produced our Constitution, and it is we the people who must ensure that its full vision is achieved in our lifetime." With this gold medal, as with the honorary doctorate degree that preceded it, the University of the Western Cape gives public recognition to Albie Sachs' commitment and ongoing tireless work after 70 years in the struggle to bring about the transformation of our society and the world, and to do so in our lifetime.
I think we now need to give a huge round of applause to all of the recipients for 2023 and 2024. Well done. Thank you very much, guests. With that, we now have a 15-minute break, a comfort break, a body break. There'll be some music. We will be entertained by Ezra, and desserts will also be served. Please be back at your seats at 8 o'clock. It is now 7:45. Thank you. 8:01. Will the recipients, Umesh, will the recipients please come and get mic'd up and then find your way to the stage, please. Attention, will all the recipients please come and get mic'd up and then make your way to the stage. Umesh, you want to help Justice Sachs to get mic'd up and then come to the stage, please? Will the Honorary Doctorate recipients and the Gold Medal Award recipient please make your way to the stage? Esteemed guests, it is now my singular pleasure to introduce Professor Sarojini Nadar, who will facilitate this session. Professor Nadar holds the Desmond Tutu Saatchi Chair in Religion and Social Justice at UWC. An award-winning feminist scholar of religion, her work explores the complex ways in which religion both supports and impedes social justice. In keeping with the legacy of Desmond Tutu, who served as UWC's Chancellor for over 25 years, she is dedicated to uncovering religion's transformative potential for positive change. As a respected member of the Academy of Science in South Africa and a B-rated NRF scholar, we are honored to have her facilitate the panel discussion with our honorees tonight. A big round of applause, and let's settle in and watch the engagement on stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lawton Mesra, Nita, for that kind introduction. Good evening, esteemed guests. Thank you for joining us. When we have sessions at conferences after lunch, we usually call that the graveyard session, right? Because you have to keep everybody awake. This is a session after dinner, so I'm not sure what session this will be, but I hope that we can keep you awake for the next hour of our conversation. So thank you for joining us. It is an absolute privilege to facilitate this conversation tonight with such distinguished awardees. And I do not say this just as a turn of phrase. I really do believe that we are tonight in the presence of greatness. And I approach my role as facilitator of this conversation with utmost respect and with gratitude for all of you. So, what to talk about when you are among leaders of such stature and acclaim, such as the ones that we have here tonight? To our panelists who are feeling nervous,
I promise not to ask anyone to solve all the world's problems the way they ask these the contestants at beauty pageants, you know, what do you hope? World peace, of course. So I'll try not to ask you those kinds of questions, but I think that with your kind of track record, you might actually be able to resolve it for us. So let's see how we go. Tonight's discussion will explore the exceptional contributions of our awardees, but we'll also try to engage in some critical contemporary issues, everything, I think, from higher education to racial, gender, and economic justice. So that's a lot of topics that we have to cover tonight. But as I've said, we are delighted to have you here for what will surely be an insightful and enriching discussion. And you've all heard their citations, you've watched the videos, so I'm not going to do a longer introduction, but I'm going to keep these introductions brief and personal. So first up, right on the far left over there, we have Professor Mun Choy, President of the University of Missouri. Prof. Choy has been a strong advocate for education, particularly for underrepresented groups, and has played a key role in international collaborations, including with the University of the Western Cape. President Choy, your profile is nothing short of impressive, as we've even seen on the video tonight. But to start us off, can you share something that isn't readily available in the public domain?
Well, thank you. First of all, it's such a great honor to be here. Watching the illustrious leaders that form this honor assembly is truly, truly inspirational. I also recognize that I am receiving this honor on behalf of the University of Missouri that has had a 38-year relationship with this incredible university. And by all measures, we have benefited so greatly. So I want to thank Rector Pretorius, also the Archbishop, and the many faculty and staff and students that enabled us to have this partnership. So thank you. Now back to your question. I told you before that I don't know how to answer this question because I am well, first of all, I love the job that I have, which is as president of the University of Missouri, where we serve 70,000 students each year. But I was reflecting that if I had my druthers, I may have chosen a different profession. And that is, while growing up in South Korea, grew up in a traditional family with a lot of Confucian values, hierarchy, in terms of putting education first and not drawing attention to oneself. But while in Korea, I also watched a lot of television, like Bonanza, listened to Elvis, and watched Ben-Hur. So in my mind's eye, I was a great dancer, a great singer, and a great actor. Now mind you, I can't do any of those things. But what really inspires me is that these individuals actually put themselves out there. Yeah. They put their passion into what they are doing. And I'm sure when I see them in their final form, in their mature state, I didn't get to experience their struggles that they experienced, maybe some criticism, but they put themselves out there each and every day. And that truly, truly inspires me. So in my fantasy, if I come back in the next life, I want to be a triple threat: a dancer, singer, and an actor. And the person that I have in mind is Hugh Jackman.
Wow.
He could do all of those things. So that's something that I don't think my wife even knows about, but I'm sure she's watching, so thank you.
Well, it's good to have this, the aspiration. What do they call it these days? They say if you can manifest it,
That's
it
right.
can happen.
If you can
So
dream it, that's right.
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe in the next life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. I know you were nervous about sharing
I
something
was,
personal,
yes.
so very grateful for that. Thank you. Next, we're honoring the late Professor Caroline Pauwels, who was a visionary leader at Freie University, Brussels. Her work in digital inclusion and her partnership with UWC have left a lasting impact on all of us. Professor Pauwels is represented today by Professor Romain Musen, and we're very happy to have you with us, Professor Musen. Thank you for agreeing to do this. But before we talk about who the person of Professor Pauwels, who she was, I think that it's appropriate that we just observe a moment of silence in her honor. So let's take a moment for that. Thank you. So, to appreciate the depth of her contribution, I think you need to, for those of you who don't know her, I didn't know her until I was given this task. I had to do a little bit of research, and I was just blown away by the person that I discovered. And so, Professor Musen, there's so much about Professor Pauwels, out there. Obviously, she led a very public life. But is there something that you would like to share about her that's more personal, that perhaps not in the public life? With permission, Nita, Popia, and all of that, but with permission.
Well, yes, but I first want to thank the University of Western Cape, and of course the rector, and actually the people, because that's also something that Caroline was. She was there for the people and with the people. And unfortunately, we lost her. I called myself in a certain period the stand-in of Caroline because I had to replace her from time to time. And if you want an anecdote, when we started to work together in her team, and she had a very team, we were friends, we had one-on-one meetings every Friday at 8 o'clock. And then she came in, late, as always. But she went swimming every morning. And then she came there, the way she walked, with her wet hair, and she said, Romain, I'm a bit late, but let's sit together and reflect on things. And as a first impression, if you saw her coming into a room, you saw that twinkle in her eyes, meaning, I'm there for the people. And that is so special.
I didn't know Professor Pauwels, but I can imagine that, just given what I've read about her. So thank you for sharing that very personal reflection on who she was. Much appreciated. Moving on, we have Justice Albie Sachs, whose lifelong commitment to social justice and human rights has fundamentally shaped, I think we all can agree on this, has fundamentally shaped South Africa's legal landscape and inspired many around the world. Justice Sachs, what's one thing about you, and there's a lot about you on the net, but what's one thing about you that might not be common knowledge?
You told me you were going to ask that question, and I had to make up my mind. Should I choose between being a mountain climber and being a dancer? And I chose the dancer.
Ooh.
Because it was less serious. Mountain climbing was too much like the struggle. And the other guys at my school, I was Sachs from Sachs, they all went to Arthur Murray in their matric. left, 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 right, left. We didn't have much money, but I think my mom thought that was kind of bourgeois stuff. And I joined the struggle. And everybody could dance in the struggle except me. Except me. Except me.
But you couldn't be the stereotype, come on.
And the samba came on and I was pushed and bumped and pushed and bumped and full of bruises. After about 6 months, I could move.
Ooh.
I could move.
Ooh.
I could move. When I lost my arm, actually, I lost that beautiful dancing that I used to do. It just wasn't the same. We used to do lang arme. And, but I had one moment, a very beautiful moment, where I even forgot I'd lost the arm in the bomb. And that was, I think you were with us when we had the conference for the World Summit on Earth Summit in Johannesburg in 2002. And we were host to judges from all over Africa to discover sustainable development. None of us really knew what it was. I knew the words, but I wasn't sure of the content. And Yvonne Mokgoro and I were responsible for organizing the event. And we had wonderful speakers, terrific presentations. What about the evening? And we wanted a South African Joel. Now, there's nobody more serious in the whole world than judges in Africa. They wear wigs in the tropics. Wigs, can you imagine? They are so stiff. We decided we don't want to be called my lord, my lady. Very first meeting of the judges. And we decided, but they are African judges, and they're going to move. But we must set the example. So we had the 3 tenors singing. We had other music, and then the band came up. And Justice Albie Sachs invited Justice Yvonne Mokgoro to have the first dance. And Yvonne was marvelous.
Of course.
She floated. I never realized I'd lost an arm. It was like rising totally above the physical catastrophe. We just glided along. And I mention that now because we loved Yvonne so much, so much. And she told me, in fact, that she and her then husband, Job, did ballroom dancing. So I'd like the whole world to know that I danced with Yvonne Mokgoro, who was a great ballroom dancer.
Well, I think in the next life you can give some training to Professor Choy over there, because that's his dream. Anyway, from dancing to language, we are also pleased to welcome Dr. Sydney Zotwana, who has been a key figure in the development and promotion of African languages in South Africa. Dr. Zotwana, what's something unique about you that is not readily known in the public sphere?
Thank you. I think first of all I would like to thank the university first, generally, and the Dean of African Studies and African Languages, and the people there, Dr. Leche, Professor Khashula, who, by the way, was my student in his first year at Rhodes University. I taught him Xhosa.
I heard that earlier, I did.
And Professor Khalakhala, whose father was my big friend when I came to Cape Town when I was still very young and stupid, but handsome. His father was a postmaster, and he liked me very much. But he was older, far older than me, and he became a friend. And one day I was with Dr. Khalakhala, and his father was, we were in East London, and I met his father again. But I think what would be more relevant to what you are asking is just very briefly, I'll try to be very brief, how I got to shift from teaching language structurally, because that's how we were trained. At school and at university, the focus was mainly on the structure of language and nothing else, you know. But in 1974, I got a job at Rhodes University in Gravestown, and to teach people who were non-language speakers, non-Xhosa language speakers. But there were a funny mix. There were those who came from the farms, who knew some Xhosa, which was not correct, but I had to teach them to unlearn what they thought they knew. But one day, one student at Rhodes came to my office. It was a young lady, she had 55% in her test result. And so she confronted me. She said, Mr. Zotwana, how can I get 55? How can I get 55% in East Xhosa? I would accept this only if it were in English. So I said, well, go to the head and ask him to send this. But that taught me something about teaching language, that no, we've been teaching language only as a communication tool. But there are other non-linguistic things that we leave out, which are actually more than just the structure of language. We do not shift from that to look at language as a social phenomenon, as a tool for other things like nation building, protecting culture. And from that day, I decided that I'm going to move out of the structure. And I moved to social linguistics. But that's about this linguistic side of it. Then, because I'm also, I did my doctorate in literature. But also I would like to tell you how I came to change from structural, from theoretical linguistics to literature. Because one day at home, in our village, there was some ritual thing. And we were sitting in the kraal, and then I was told that there were two young ladies who wanted to see me. So I came out of the kraal, and I didn't know these young girls. And then they told me that they were standard 10 students at our secondary school. Standard 10, which is now grade 12. And they were reading one of my books. And so, but they wanted to, when the schools opened, this was June holidays, so they want to boast to their classmates when the schools reopened that they met somebody who has written a book, because they always thought that the books were written by people who are no longer alive.
Well, we still have to study a lot of the...
So that's when I decided that I must also move out of looking at literature for its aesthetic value. There must be something else about literature than just its aesthetic value. So I decided to move on to the Marxist kind of literary appreciation or criticism and teaching. So I thought, well, but then that was also a problem for me because I had to read about Marx to check at how he looked at literature. But then looking at Marx made me look at Engels. And then I moved, and that's how I decided I must also go far back as the classical philosophers to check what they were saying about literature, basically about storytelling. That storytelling is not just about enjoyment. It should reflect history. It should reflect culture. It should contribute to the maintenance of national stability and so on and so on. So that's how I came to be where I am today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zotwana. Thank you. We'll have a chance to probe some of this a little bit more, but just listening to your journey, it sounds like a lot of your learning has been about unlearning. And that's what I'm always telling my students. The journey of learning is also a journey of unlearning. We have so much to unlearn. Moving on, we have Justice Dikgang Moseneke, whose legal brilliance and commitment to democracy have left an indelible mark on our nation. Justice Moseneke, what's one little known fact about you that you'd like to share? Am I going to time you? Or?
Is this on? Well, let me start off by expressing my deep gratitude to the university for tonight. Not just the honorary doctorate, but the way it was done and everything else that went with the warmth and the excellence of making the presentation. All the others I had to wait and wait for 250 to 300 students to be kept before I had an opportunity. But here it is. My mother, who was a great cook, burst into complete laughter on a Sunday afternoon after we'd been to church and would come together and gather. Like here, I've got my whole family there. It's about 10 children and grandchildren. So we are a very egregious lot. We come together easily at the slightest provocation. She laughs and laughs and laughs, and so everybody says, "Ma, grandma, what is it? Why are you laughing and laughing endlessly?" And she looks at me and says, "I just wonder how you managed it." And I look at her and I can't believe she is repeating this, but let me tell you what it is. I'm 15, I'm on Robben Island. I've been there for 6 months. And my mother comes for a visit. You had one visit every 6 months at max, so you had 2 visits in a year. She comes out there and says, "I'd like to see my son. Can I have a contact visit?" You have special permission to get a contact visit. She sits there. The father, his name was Visser, he was a major or something, walks out, and my mother unfurls a foil. In it is a warm chicken.
A woman after my own heart.
2 warm buns. The water has just gone out. Now, the rule is prisoners may not eat food that is not provided by prison. Somebody may poison you, may kill you, whatever else. But that's part of your punishment. You don't get food from outside. My mother looked one side and the other side, put a chicken there. When Visser came back, the chicken was only bones. And my mother had wrapped up the bones. And the 2 warm bread rolls were gone. But this happened in a flash of a pan, I'm telling you.
Of course.
So many, and it was painful then. She was very determined that she was going to give her son for better, for worse. If she went to jail 2 great it would be. But she sits there and many years after, she bursts into total laughter. Mokoena, how did you manage to do something so miraculous? So I don't often repeat it, but if I have to eat quickly, if I have to polish off a chicken, I would do it fresh.
I love the story. I love the story. For those of you who know me, know my love of the kitchen and cooking, you will know that there's nothing that can come between a mother and feeding her children. So that's a delightful story. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, we are honored to have with us Lindiwe Hani, the daughter of the late Chris Hani. Lindiwe, your father's legacy is deeply ingrained in the fabric of our nation's history. But before you share something personal about your dad that might not be readily known in the public domain, I think it's only appropriate that we also observe a moment of silence this evening to honor the late Chris Hani. A moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Well,
Lindiwe.
I'd first like to thank the University of Western Cape for this honor, posthumous for my dad. It's really gratifying and humbling as a family that decades later, that Daddy is still in the fabric of people's mind. It makes his struggle and his painful death somewhat worth it. So we really thank UWC for really honoring him. And I feel like because we gave him such a hard time, he had 3 girls, right? And we gave him such a hard time with 3 girls, that this is his punishment for me. Because I feel like you play that game, which one doesn't belong, you know? But what's interesting fact about my dad is that he was a great soldier, he was a great leader, he was an intellectual, but he was also an embarrassing father. You know, we found him a ridiculous human being at times, and we tended to challenge him. We were very much, my late sister Kwezi was extremely boy crazy, and she would be on the phone for hours. And this was the time when it was landlines, right? So Daddy used to say, you have to keep the phone lines open, girls. We might get an emergency, but you know, young love. So she'd be there twirling the phone, speaking, and then you'd hear Daddy just marching into the room going, no, Makwezi, you have no decency. You have no concept of telephone culture. This is not the way we do things. So he was just ridiculous. I don't know how to say this because he's Chris Hani, right? Yeah. But he was really, could be a very silly, funny, didn't take himself seriously. Yeah, that's who my dad was. So what you saw is what you got. And I'm sure even Uncle Albie could tell you more stories about what kind of man he was. Yeah.
I love that. Earlier, thank you so much. Telephone culture, now there's something too, especially in the current age. I think telephone culture is important. But I love the fact that he didn't, take himself so seriously, like you say, he was a dad, and he was, earlier at brunch, we were talking about the story of the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu being at the university, the Freie University in Amsterdam, and they were all, one of the recipients, the honorary recipients, tells the story of standing in a queue and waiting to process. And everything is silent, and everybody's all proper in their garments, and there's a lot of pomp and ceremony that goes with that kind of event. And he while they're standing in absolute silence waiting for the procession to begin, he, in his characteristic style, guffaws, suddenly just breaks out into this laughter, and everybody turns around to look at him, and he says, "You people take yourself very seriously, don't you?" And apparently that set the tone for the rest of the event, which is supposed to be a celebration, and that's what we're doing here tonight. So I thought that this was a good way to start this evening off, to ask for something personal, just so that we can start off, not take ourselves so seriously, even though this is quite a serious event. But we now go on to the more serious discussion, and I'd like to then begin with Justice Albie Sachs. Justice Sachs, as a scholar from the humanities and social sciences myself, I was particularly interested to learn that you are credited with advancing what is known as the aesthetic turn in legal scholarship. This is an approach that intertwines law with elements of art, culture, and creativity. A wonderful combination, if you ask me. But perhaps you could elaborate for us what this means and how it has influenced your work.
Sitting in this room brings back huge emotion to me, and you see how it touches on. It's a great hall. It was designed by Jack Barnett. Jack Barnett was in the struggle. In fact, he was imprisoned in 1960 at the emergency, and Dick van der Ros asked him to help redesign University of the Western Cape. It was like a high school. It was not only in the bush, it was designed as something flat, boring to control. And he said a university should have spirit and pizzazz and dignity and style. And this was one of the first products of that. And now that was in the 1970s. Look how fresh this room looks. He was a modernist, but not a cold, sterile modernist, a human, warm, humane modernist. And he was the one who said, when we needed a building of our own, he said, have a competition. If you don't have a competition, Public Works will find somebody and they'll do a nice, safe building. Competition, you'll get something wonderful. And sadly, he died. He didn't see it through. That's my first memory. The second is, after 24 years and 5 weeks and so many hours and so many minutes of exile, I'm back in Cape Town. And I'm staying with Dalla and Farida Omar. And Dalla doesn't lose an opportunity. I arrive on a Saturday, on a Sunday, he said, Albie, come with me. I hop into the car, he drives, and now I'm at the University of the Western Cape. Oh, this is the university. And he brings me into this hall. And the hall is filled with Muslims from all over South Africa. And he pushes me forward and he says, Albie, now you speak to them. What? So, luckily, being trained as a lawyer, you know how to improvise. And I realized the problem that the people had, that's why they were gathering. Does being non-racial mean Islam is out? Your language is out, your culture is out, your faith is out, you're just non-racial, you're just a Democrat. And having lived in Mozambique, I knew that's exactly the opposite. You bring in Islam, you bring in your culture, you bring in your values, and you enrich the whole. And Ibrahim Rasool said that enlightened him completely. And then I sat down again. But I couldn't have had a better re-entry. You know, these space people circle around and they land in the sea somewhere and they need a few days of rehabilitation. No rehabilitation for me, straight to UWC. UWC is really in my heart and spirit. And it was here that we really, for better or for worse, and I know there's at least one person in the room who thinks it's for worse because she told me so yesterday at a meeting here at the Kada Asmal Moot competition room. This really was UWC, the engine room of our Constitution. Wasn't UCT, wasn't Wits, wasn't Pretoria, yeah, and it was Dalla Amar, Ada Asmal, Bululan Luka, Zola Squia, Yvonne Mokgoro came afterwards, and we worked flat out, full-time, providing concepts, ideas, having workshops, Center for Development Studies here, workshops on proportional on electoral system, should we have a constitutional court on the land, we had 3 on the land, and really the role that UWC played is sadly not fully recognized at UWC. And whenever I come back here, I just want to remind people, I want to reconnect with that energy, that spirit, that brightness. We had more revolutionaries per square inch at UWC than anywhere else in the world.
Yep.
And it was every kind. There was no orthodoxy. There was no line. Everybody had a voice. Everybody could speak. It was really a wonderful, wonderful space to be. And that's built into this room, this space, and why getting an honor from you is a true, true, true deep honor for me. Thank you.
Oh, that's really, thank you. Thank you, Justice Sachs. The idea of this aesthetic turn in legal scholarship is fascinating, but I'd like to also draw a parallel with the work and contribution by the late Professor Caroline Pauwels, represented here, as we've said, by Professor Romain Musen. Now, if Justice Sachs is known for the aesthetic turn, I think, Professor Musen, you might agree that Professor Pauwels could be credited with a compassionate turn in higher education management and training. Could you share a little bit about this? This seems to have been a whole life's work. That's what she was committed to. Could you tell us a little bit more about what she meant by this compassionate university?
Well, there are many things that I could mention here. First of all, why do you think she was always late at the meeting? Because she never stopped listening to people. And she always wanted to have a full conversation. But if you want an anecdote, during COVID was isolation. And at that time I was Vice Rector for Internationalization. I was very worried about our international students, far away from home, couldn't travel home, and they were there. And I told Caroline, I think we have to do something about that. I think I'm gonna ask the staff to call our international students just to ask how they're doing. No, she said. We'll do that for every single student of our university.
Wow.
So we made a project with the Faculty of Psychology, and we called every student. We couldn't reach to everybody, but we could also sense that in some of them they really had some mental problems. So we knew when there was an alarm bell going off. So and then we could help, taken what the situation was, of course. And that's also a part of the mission of our university. Because the mission of our university is to be an urban engaged university. That we, as a university, bring science to the city of Brussels, which is very multicultural, but also to the people over there. And another project of Caroline was then that we had at least 1 week a year that we went to teach in the city. For instance, the students of the law school would then get a lecture by their professor at the Belgian Parliament or the Flemish Parliament. So they were there where also our constitution is actually checked. Or in a theater for the art students, so that we could go to the city. Another project, for instance, is that on the other side of the road, there are old military barracks that was later for the National Police. So we bought those together with our French-speaking mother university, and in collaboration with some funding from Europe and from Brussels. And we now created there an international campus, so that those old buildings are integrated in society, because there are also apartments for people living there. So the students will be in the city together with them. So that's Caroline. Compassionate also meant to connect. She created We Connect, where science and arts meet. One topic, we had scientists, we had artists, and they worked together on that. And it was mentioned a bit before, Caroline was also in the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because we are. I'm greater because we work together. That's Caroline. She was a person like that. She really wanted to listen to people. And another aspect there is that she created Difference Day on the day of freedom of press. And then we had, together with our sister university, we gave an honorary doctorate to international journalists or people that were, well, in danger in their country. And the motto was, and that's very important, listen, speak openly, listen respectfully, because every opinion matters. And I think this is also in the spirit of UWC. Listen, have an opinion, but don't interrupt people, because every opinion matters. And actually, in the legacy of that, I'm proud to announce that we will award a yearly prize for a master thesis of a UWC student on that topic. We'll discuss how we call it, but it will be the Caroline Pauwels, whatever, Prize of Freedom of Expression. It will be a prize of 1,500 euros, and I can calculate it's about 30,000 rands for a thesis for a student here on this university. Because we are strategic partners, and we only will and try and reinforce that relationship. Because this university is like our university. You share the same values, and I'll say it in French. Liberté, égalité, fraternité, meaning liberty, equalness, and brotherhood. And that is the spirit of our universities. And that is Caroline. That's a compassionate part of it. But watch out, when she had something in her mind, she went for it. And I said sometimes, but Caroline, you reach for the stars. But what she did, she spread stardust amongst the people around her. And that's why we admire her so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope the students have been listening very carefully. A scholarship in Professor Pauwels' name at the University of the Western Cape. I think this is an absolute wonderful way to honor her legacy and who she was. But we are also celebrating Professor Pauwels this evening as the only woman being honored here tonight. And I think that this is very significant, particularly in South Africa. For those guests from outside of South Africa, August is known as Women's Month in South Africa. It is set aside to honor the 1956 march to Parliament by 20,000 women who were opposing the pass laws in South Africa. And it got me thinking about why it is that women often receive less recognition for their lifetime achievements. And perhaps how does this disparity impact our broader struggle for gender equity? And I wonder if any of the panelists would be interested in engaging that particular question with me tonight.
Do you want to start?
Well, that wasn't the case at our university, of course, because she was a chief and she really made sure that, well, as in égalité, everything was equal, men, women, and of course there is that difference in academia. But she was worried about that and appointed someone in staff, well, at academia, just to check, is this imbalanced or not? And, well, she was an example for everything in that case. And I think that legacy is still there at our university, because not only our university, but the whole world has strong women. But we have to recognize that, and the women have to speak for themselves. Sometimes they don't do that. That's also very important.
Women speak for themselves. Maybe, Lindy, where you want to reflect on this.
I think it's something that it's very sad because coming from my generation, when I look at my daughter, that it feels that as much as we're making steps, we're still going backwards, right?
Right.
There are many women who accomplish amazing things, but I think we're always waiting for men to recognize these achievements instead of celebrating ourselves and nominating ourselves. So it's almost that hard thing of waiting to ask permission to be seen or heard. So I think that as women, we are learning to own spaces, to enter rooms, and to take control. But we're the only ones who can lead that. We need to stop waiting for men to be like, yes, darling, you can do it, you know? So that's my thought on that.
Thank you. Lots of support for that. Coming back to the idea of this compassionate university, compassion and nurturing are often seen as soft skills, right? And therefore the responsibility of women leaders. And yet I think if the COVID pandemic taught us anything, it is that these are important universal values. President Mun Choy, the idea of a compassionate university seems particularly challenging to implement in an increasingly corporate environment of higher education. How have you navigated this, and perhaps could you share what has been your most valuable lessons, especially in the US, in promoting compassion within a corporate framework?
Well, thank you for that question. Let me first begin by saying that I appreciate people that have compassion, people that are willing to go through the suffering, understand it, and try to help, and that's so important. But those that I hold in the highest regard are those that take actions based on the compassion that they feel.
So it's not just charity,
No,
it's justice.
not. And there are so many great examples of that. And the University of Missouri is what we call a land-grant university that was free during the middle of the American Civil War. And many people credit Abraham Lincoln and Senator Justin Morrill for starting the land-grant movement. But it started way before by a very, I would say, unknown academic named Jonathan Baldwin Turner, who was a professor of literature at Illinois College. He was actually removed from Illinois College because of his abolitionist views in the 1830s and 40s. But by working in the frontiers of Illinois, he recognized that there are so many missed opportunities for what he called the sons of toil. Back then, university education comprised of theology, philosophy, classics. Very important fields, but none that sons and daughters of farmers can attain. So he proposed the idea of having a compassionate approach to lift up communities by providing these sons of toil at the time with the agriculture, mechanical arts. That's what led to the land grants. And so when I think about compassion, I always go back to the founding mission of universities like ours, to really focus on improving the lives of others through education, and that's key. Going back to the idea of a corporatization of higher ed, I look at corporatization in a way that benefits the people that we have at the university. Our university is a $5 billion operation annually. We're a nonprofit. So we must be able to generate $5 billion in revenue to make $5 billion expenditure, mostly in people. So if we don't have a business mindset to ensure, and I'm looking at your CFO, then people are not going to get paid. We want to have scholarships for our students. But I don't take it to an extreme that says we must seek profits or efficiencies that take away from the mission. We have to recognize that it's learning, research, and engagement that are the keys. And that's why we support research that may take decades for the benefits to be realized. And that's why we make investments in students that are Pell students that come from the poorest families in our state and surrounding states and provide them with a free education, because our investment in them will create an opportunity for them to lift up their entire families that benefit our communities overall. So it's a balance that we're seeking, but that compassion has to be something not only that we teach at our university, but it's got to be taught way before students come to our university, where their compassion then can lead to actions that benefit the community. So it really is a pleasure to work at a public land grant university, and in many ways we share common interests and common principles with the University of Western Cape.
Thank you. And I think what we share most in common is that commitment to developing a critical graduate, but also a compassionate graduate. And I think that's really important. Justice Moseneke, let's shift our focus from higher education management to the acquisition of knowledge and education more generally. Knowledge acquisition, as well as obtaining qualifications, were cornerstones of your generation, particularly during your time on Robben Island, which you touched on a little bit earlier. You earned your degrees under incredibly challenging circumstances. Could you share with us a little bit of how you and others pursued education on Robben Island? And what do you think of the concern sometimes expressed by academics that while today's students are still committed to activism, as we saw them valiantly fighting the good cause in Fees Must Fall and Roads Must Fall movements, etc., that perhaps we need to combine that more with the deep commitment to education and to intellectual growth. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you. I have many thoughts on that. Let me try and put them forth succinctly. First, the need to improve our circumstances on Robben Island was an obvious one. We all studied. From me, 15 years old, to our leader, President Nelson Mandela. Everybody was studying. Whether you were Ahmed Katrada or you were Jeff Masamula or whoever you were, everybody was studying. So there's a deep recognition that you're going to need hardcore skills that are necessary in order to be able to achieve what we had set ourselves to achieve, which really one was to destroy apartheid and its colonial tentacles, and to be able to create a new and more just society. And in that justness, by the way, to include quite centrally gender equity. There was no conceptual debate or doubt about the centrality of that particular demand in our desire to be able to change society. So the one deep recognition was, and part, I think, of what President Choy was talking about, compassion was one thing, but actually you needed hard-nosed, hard-wired skills in order to make and to infuse usefulness to compassion. So compassion and emotion alone, and we identified that readily on Robben Island, and we knew, because we trusted and knew that one day we were going to rule the country, and we had to clean up our act and be better than what we were. So the centrality of education is beyond any debate. Content and context are matters that we will debate all the time. But what I often say, as you know, I teach at a number of law schools up to now, and I did it again last week at this very campus, was to say to young people that one of my biggest realizations for me as a young revolutionary, I thought you could change society just like that. In other words, if you were to pronounce on the high mission of our revolution, and you write it neatly, as Albie and I and others did, that would be the end of the road. Nothing is more false. The core requirements currently for both young activists and indeed all activists is to actually understand that they have to defend each and every one of those aspirations that we actually want to have. And that gender equity doesn't come up just because it has been written somewhere, or because people toy around it or demand it. Of course, universities should, and young people should demand just about everything. So we learned very gradually that actually, in the end, we're going to need skills just to get water out of the tap. We're going to have to find ways to create an effective justice system that curbs crime and protects people. We learned as we go along that you're going to need much more than an efficient court system that has high ideals but also produces hard-nosed outcomes that benefit society. And in fact, we are learning every day as we go through now. We have to find the money to fund NSFAS. And that money doesn't drop. That money doesn't drop from heaven. It has to be, and therefore you have to have an economy that works. You have to create a just environment like where I work to make sure that the courts work. In fact, every morning when I wake up and I switch on my TV, you can see what that magistrate did in Wynberg, what that judge did in Natal. In other words, people who work in my space wake up and go to their posts and do their work and try and keep the legal system going. Why? Because it's not sufficient to be a revolutionary. You have to be accountable.
Can someone write this down? I think this deserves a meme on its own.
So education, to be transformative, it has to be infused into our quest to be different, to be better.
Yeah.
And if I had to boast for a moment, we're having a lady Chief Justice from tomorrow. When is the 31st? When is the 1st? Tomorrow. We're having a brand new Chief Justice who's a lady, a colleague of mine. And a befitting tribute to our quest and our attempts to try and reorder our society in beneficial ways. And it takes hard grind. It takes an Albie Sachs putting in 50, 60 years of struggle to make a difference. It takes me moving like a village preacher telling people, don't lie, don't steal, don't be lazy, work hard. Taxes are earned, and they should never be stolen. We should find criminals, put them in jail. Basic things, common sense that my mother told me when I was young, even though she laughs at me about eating chicken so quickly. Now, I'm talking too much, but all I'm saying is that what I've learned as a young revolutionary, and having studied on Robben Island together with all our leaders, when Albie ran away, I went to jail. That's really what happened, okay? It's this. There's no switch, there's no flick, there's no just like that.
It's hard work.
Each one of us, young and old revolutionaries, have to stay faithful to the task. We've got to stay honest. We've got to try and be compassionate to our people. We must love them. We must give them whatever we have in order to be able to change society. It's not an event. There's no blueprint for it, I've learned now. But when I was young, I thought we could do it like that.
Yeah.
So there's hard work out there, and education must sit, and therefore universities must sit right in the middle of that attempt to change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So much wisdom right there for our young people in our audience and for older people in the audience too. Thank you so much, Justice Moseneke. Dr. Zotwana, keeping with this theme of knowledge production, you did already share with us much in your introduction about your work as a language specialist with indigenous language, etc. But is there anything else that you would like to reflect on in terms of how you have navigated the challenges of perhaps mother tongue education and the decolonial turn in higher education? Is there something that you can share with us about your lessons in fighting for the recognition of indigenous languages? Is there something that you could perhaps share? You want to be forward, of course. Why, can we? Yes.
He says to me, you know, Moseneke, I'm doing something. And I say, tell me what, doctor? I'm translating George Orwell's Animal Farm.
What?
Now
I
he
like
wants
this kind of
every
forwardness.
Xhosa speaking and every other person on the continent to read Animal Farm in his or her language. We wouldn't be having so many thieves in the...
Well, tell us more about that. Thank you for that lead. Tell us more about that. That's what I want to hear about. When is it going to be done? Is he looking for a publisher? I'm sure we can arrange that.
I didn't know that Justice Moseneke can't keep a secret. I told him, because I trusted him.
This is a good secret to let out, though.
But that's a good lesson I've learned tonight. But coming back to your question, I think the first thing I think we should really accept and recognize and strategize as to how we can deal with it in the area of language. Number one for me is that we need to have a very aggressive agenda and program for the reorientation of minds to a point where people can recognize and accept that there is actually no link between English and intelligence. because there seems to be, even our parents, the problem we have now with advocating for the teaching of all subjects through the medium of African languages. People must be taught through their languages. But the problem is that people, even educated people, but mostly people out there are asking, what's going to happen to our kids when they're looking for jobs if they don't know English? So the struggle should first of all be on the equality of languages and a change of attitude. Because I always tell when I have to, at conferences, I always tell people about my grandchildren. I'm a very dramatic person, and I like to play with kids and tell them stories. And my grandson, he is late now, when I tell them stories, that once upon a time in Xhosa, and then my grandson would say, liar, liar. Now, it's okay. I'm trying to think now, when I was young, could I say to my mother,
Shoe?
That is, you are lying.
That's a shoe coming
But
at
my
you.
grandson, so it's a little thing, insignificant, I think. But it goes to show that if we don't start at home and bring our children up in a way that they will recognize the link between language and identity. So if you lose your language, if you have no respect for your language, then you're actually drifting away from your identity. So that's the other thing. And the culture, if you drift away from your language, you lose your culture, because language and culture has significance in nurturing your nationalism, your nationality. So, but the thing about South Africa is that the labor market is dominated by English. So people keep on asking, how do you, where will our children work if you say they must be taught in African languages? And they will go into the job market, and the job market is dominated by English. But there's another problem which we don't talk much about. Maybe we are afraid, I don't know, but honestly speaking, the government, our government, I know that they've got other priorities that compete with language, but I don't think they have covered themselves in glory when it comes to language development. And it's so sad when you think of, I've also studied history, by the way, it's so sad when you think of, when you compare the issue of the Union of South Africa and CODESA. You check the extent to which Afrikaans, which was Dutch then, was part of the deliberations there. But within CODESA, language was not part of the priorities. So we got into our democracy having not planned much about the African languages. But we know that so many priorities that compete with language, maybe, but still, even though we accept that there are other priorities that compete with language, I still, many of us that have moved away from structural or theory or theoretical linguistics into sociolinguistics actually accept that there are basic needs which are probably in the attitude of the government, which are probably more important than language. So for us in South Africa, it was just enough in the Constitution, to talk about the development of previously disadvantaged languages, including my nice language, and the formation of PANSAL, the Pan-African, that it's a toothless lion, that PANSAL. I'm sorry to say, because there are members of PANSAL here.
I'm sure they're going to take that, take that back.
Unfortunately, standards are actually going down when it comes to isiXhosa. I'm talking about isiXhosa, but I'm sure it's like that in other languages. There's a lot that I think we need to be truthful about when it comes to language development, because I think at the moment we're just talking and the government is not putting the money where the mouth is.
Where the mouth is, yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Zotwana, for that reflection. You reflected on language being an integral part of identity and culture, and I think identity and culture is deeply connected with issues of land. And that brings me, gets me thinking about our recent decision here at the University of the Western Cape that our council took to be in solidarity with Palestine. And I'm moving now on to that particular topic because, Lindy Ware, I'm thinking about your father, and I don't think many people know this, but he drew parallels between the struggles at Orange Farm and Palestine, and I wondered if you may reflect a little bit on that. He called where the ANC branch was in Orange Farm, it was called Palestine Central. And I wonder if you want to reflect a little bit about the ongoing struggles in Palestine, the occupation, and what you think your father's views would be in the current moment.
Well, I always find it dangerous to assume what my father would say or do.
Of course.
Just in case I do get it wrong. But I think for this one, it's a bit easier because he didn't tolerate injustices, he didn't tolerate mass murder, he didn't tolerate discrimination and displacement of people in their homes, right? So for that, it's easier for me to say that he would be in support of Palestine, just the same way that Palestinians were supporting our struggle. And it's just it's a pity because we always talk about that there's some fear of being pro, because the thing is, being pro-Palestine doesn't mean you're pro-Hamas. Yeah. You know, you're pro-Palestine and the freedom of Palestine, but you get accused of being an anti-Semitic, so it's very difficult. But knowing the Chris Hani that I did, the Chris Hani that raised me, the Chris Hani who gave me his ethics, values, and morals, he would stand in solidarity 100% with what the Palestinians are going through.
I think you've said that as succinctly as possible at this part of the night, so I appreciate your succinctness. I think we've come to the end of a really deep and enriching conversation. Thank you to all our panelists. Yes. Thank you so much. I'm going to give each of you, because I don't know where the time went, but I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds to resolve world peace, to bring us, no, I'm kidding. 30 seconds to perhaps share something about what your vision for the future is, whether it's your university or your own space for this country. It's a big ask, but 30 seconds, maximum 1 minute from each of you. President Choy.
30 seconds. Well, first of all, there's a lot of suffering going on in the world, and even during my time here, I landed on Wednesday, I learned about the famine in Namibia, and it just goes to show that one has to live beyond themselves to understand the important struggles that are occurring throughout the world. What's happening in Sudan is a catastrophe, and we need to increase awareness of the struggles that people are having. And I want our young people that we're educating, to take their compassion and have actions based on the compassion to elevate all those around them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Professor Musen.
Don't forget, we also have a war on European ground.
Yeah.
Which is even closer than, let's say, the Middle East. So, I probably already said this, but when people stop listening to each other, they don't hear anymore. I think that's a very important thing, and that's also something Caroline wrote in a book, the Ode aan de Verwondering. You'll understand Flemish, Ode to Wonder, and she admired Nelson Mandela, who, by the way, has an honorary doctorate at our university.
Yeah.
He received it somewhere in the mid-90s, and Desmond Tutu, because in very hard times, when conflicts arise, find a way to listen to people and don't judge too soon. And that is, I think, a message. Listen to each other, talk to each other, never turn away your eyes from someone.
Thank you so much. Dr. Zotwana.
It's so difficult to repeat.
It's difficult because you have 30 seconds.
My vision of of a future South Africa is a country where services, right from the bottom, from a rural village like where I come from, where services are served in people's languages. People should be able to access services for which they pay tax through their languages, because presently there is so much that's going wrong in the judicial area, the justice area, because people cannot speak their language. They must. So you get for example, you get a minister or a politician who goes to some village at the back of beyond to talk about some political issue or whatever, and speak English.
So services in their own languages.
People knowing that the rate of illiteracy is high there, but because you want to be heard by some other people on TV, not your audience here.
Yes.
So I think if people can be reorientated into respecting language, the role of language in society, that it is more than just a communicating tool. It's a bigger, there are bigger.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zotwana. Lindiwe, in your own words, not your dad's. Don't channel your dad.
Sometimes I can't distinguish the difference. I hear his voice all the time. But I do think that because he was very passionate about young people, and there's been many years where we're all very complacent and despondent in this country, but I think what this last election has shown us is that when young people show up, they make such a huge difference. And the ANC did hurt. We shouldn't just see them now with their arrogance and their smiles that everything is fine. They took a beating and they felt it. So for me, I'll just keep encouraging participation in society, listening, speaking, hearing voices, and because those are the little ways we can all just make a difference. And we have to fight for ourselves here.
Thank you. So much wisdom there. Thank you. Uncle Albie, you're really proud of her, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm going to give away a secret.
Okay.
I broke a very important rule of advocacy. I used to be 100% correct, very prim and proper. I helped one of my clients who'd been sentenced to jail to escape from South Africa. His name was Chris Hani.
Ah.
They can strike me off the bar if they want to. I'll go proudly. What came to mind when you asked this impossible question is a useless answer, but it's my answer from my experience. One of the biggest, most beautiful moments in my life was arriving in Mozambique, 1976. Liberated zone of humanity. And I see a soldier, a black soldier with a gun, and I feel fantastic. A gun on our side. A gun that's not pointing at us, that's defending us.
Yes.
11 years later, I'm being wheeled out. I'm half conscious. There are lots of people up waving to me and singing. It was very, very, very beautiful. And I see a soldier with a gun. And I say, no more guns. No more guns. We've got to find another way.
Thank you. Thank you. And maybe that message will go back to the US as well. No more guns. Justice Moseneke, last but not least.
Sure. As a child revolutionary, I wish our youth all the tenacity, the honesty, and the hard work to try and achieve those ideals of a just society. And I think in the middle of our biggest problem in this is inequality. It's reeking. You can just drive from here to a city. Yeah. The day we can do much to resolve inequality, that's to destroy, reduce poverty, reduce exclusion, reduce alienation. Now that task, we did our bit. You heard Albie. You can sit next to Albie. I did. I worked with him for 15 years. It's agonizing. It's painful. I can tell you a couple of painful stories, not as his. Or Tata Mandela, 27 years. But what am I saying? Oh, Chris Hani, Comrade Hani, succumbing on his driveway. So what's the ask for you? The ask for you is to accept it's not a switch, and you have a proper, disciplined task to actually move us to that next phase where we reduce inequality, socioeconomic inequality. And the day we do that, crime will drop, hatred will drop, all of the other evils will nearly almost melt away. We're going to become a better place. And that is The aluta, they have to continue. Thank you.
Aluta continua.
Yeah.
There's no better note to end on than aluta continua, I think. So once again, thank you so much to all our guests here. We ran a little bit over time because the conversation was so deep and enriching, and I hope that you've all enjoyed this conversation tonight. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you, and congratulations once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
A big round of applause. You will have to agree that that was truly inspiring. As our guests make their way off the stage, I'd like to call on our chairperson of council, Ms. Koliswa Mpongoshe, who is going to give us her closing address. Please welcome Ms. Mpongoshe to the stage, please.
All right. All right. Thank you. Rector and Vice Chancellor, Professor Pretorius, Chancellor Archbishop Makgoba, members of council present here today, Registrar Dr. Lawton Misra, President of Convocation Mr. Nompula, President of the SRC Mr. Skudla, members of the SRC present here today, incoming Rector and Vice Chancellor Professor Balfour, our esteemed honorees, the respective families of our honorees, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by expressing my most sincere gratitude to Professor Pretorius for his role in initiating the process that has culminated in us being here today. This university has a very proud history of fighting for justice. We are also an institution that is training its eye on academic excellence through research. Additionally, one of our stated objectives centers around teaching and learning. We are also an institution which recognizes its role not only in informing local discourse, but one which actively seeks collaborations with others across the globe, all in pursuit of a better world for all. I am therefore heartily pleased that today's proceedings have been reflective of the tapestry of life that this university is about. Thank you, Rector. The words in the graduation procession song, Gaudimus Igitur, mean, "Let us therefore rejoice." Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here tonight to honor and celebrate some of the most distinguished human beings to have walked this earth. They come from very diverse backgrounds, different walks of life, different parts of the world. But if there is one phrase I would use to describe them, it is that they have lived a life of purpose. Living a life of purpose requires a great degree of humility, a humility evidenced by the ability to harness one's power and privilege for the good of all humanity. A life of purpose requires sacrifice, and the families of those who live a life of purpose, our honorees amongst those, will testify to the sacrifices that their fathers, their mothers, their sisters, brothers, their loved ones have had to make in order to make these wonderful contributions to society. Tonight's ceremony is as much about celebrating our honorees as it is about celebrating what is good about us. They actually, with all of the work that they've been doing, the contributions that they've been making, they are making us good. They are a reflection of what is good about us. So we have a claim to the efforts that they've made, because they make those on our behalf. They are the guardrails that have helped to prevent society and humanity from falling into the abyss. My apologies. I therefore invite you all to join me in acknowledging the impact that they have had on society and the enduring legacy that their actions have had. And when I speak in the past tense, I'm very conscious of the legacy that has been left for us. Esixhamlayo namhlanje incam yobusi obushiwe ngutatuani. So we honor him and we acknowledge him and his impact, but we also acknowledge the impact of those who are currently with us and amongst us, and the impact that they've had on humanity at large. Let us raise our hands in salutation in recognition of their life of service for the greater good. Let us tip our hats to them, for they have embodied what it means to live a life of meaning, to live a life of purpose, to live a life of selflessness. Because of their efforts, we have lived to see a better life. We have chosen the path of soft vengeance rather than revenge. That is actually from Professor Sachs, who happens to have been my human rights law professor, by the way, just saying. So it is through men and women of the ilk of Professor Sachs that we owe the freedoms that we are enjoying today. It is also, because of people like Justice Moseneke that we enjoy the freedoms that we do today. We talked about compassion, and I listened very intently because I have, in my speech, I talk about compassion as well. And I talk about compassion specifically relating to Justice Moseneke. I don't think there is a South African around who will not recall a time when Justice Moseneke was on TV. And, sometimes people with this enormous power almost have this sense about them that they cannot be seen to be vulnerable at any point. And Justice Moseneke showed compassion to the most downtrodden of South Africans and did not hide his emotion. And to me, that said, that is real power. When you show compassion, when you are able to show your vulnerability, but when you are able to stand side by side with the most downtrodden in a dingy little hall, and you're listening to them, and you're taking them seriously, and you act on the promises that you make, that to me is power. But it is power that is used properly, effectively, and for the greater good. We thank you, Dr. Moseneke. I asked myself the question as I was preparing for tonight, that, we are celebrating, it's wonderful, but we must not ever forget that we live in a world where there is just so much inequality still. Despite all of the strides that have been made, technological advancements, scientific advancements, human rights, the arts, culture, you name it, a lot of work has been done, and we don't take that away. But there is still, amongst the peoples of the world, a very stubborn and unshakable suffering. The divide between rich and poor persists unabated. The reversal of gains in human rights across the globe is a cause for concern. The mainstreaming of materialism and corruption is also a cause for concern. And all of these things point to one conclusion. The world outside of these four walls is on the edge of a precipice. And so we have a job to do. And I want to address myself to abantwana bam, the youth amongst us. Justice Moseneke said it, that it is now up to you. You know, if you can use a relay race as an analogy for what is happening, they have done what they needed to do. They are now passing on the baton to yourselves. There's a reason why you are here. It is not so that you have fun and you take pictures and that's the end of it. It is so that you learn. You learn, not just by watching, but by listening, absorbing what is being said to you. But also, it goes beyond these four walls. You will need to do the work outside of these four walls. Reach out to those who have walked the path before you. Ask questions. Do not emulate behavior that is unbecoming of a revolutionary. Do not do that. Because you're doing yourselves a disfavor. You're doing your country a disfavor. You are doing humanity a disfavor if you do that. And so, in closing, I want to go back to that song that says, Gaudiamus igitur. Let us therefore rejoice. It is my fervent hope that those of us who have had the pleasure of being a part of this august occasion will have an appreciation of the immeasurable position of fortune that we're in. May we take a leaf out of each of the books of our honorees and do what we can to make a positive difference within our own spheres of influence. However small that sphere of influence is, make a difference and make sure it's a positive difference. May the individual and collective contributions of our honorees be made visible to all to see, especially our students, our youth, our children, because in the end, this is their legacy. Your efforts, your work, dear honorees, is their inheritance. We thank you. Gaudiamus igitur. Let us therefore rejoice. But let us not forget, it is not yet Uhuru. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I think you can do better than that. Yes. So before Professor Patha comes to thank all of us for how hard we've worked the last few weeks, I think I want you to approach the weekend with a bit of lightness. And since our rector had begun this entire idea and it actualized into what we have tonight, we thought we'd like to pay tribute to him tonight. So sit back, relax, and let's enjoy this very short video of Professor Tyrone Pretorius.
One down, 11 to go. But don't you dare feel sorry for us, because this is what we do. As you young people would say, this is how we roll. The only drawback is after 300 lifts, stretches and caps, I have to get physiotherapy in between ceremonies. actually been noticing the change in clothes. I noticed Dr. Pillay has got in a different suit. And so does Thandi. In this morning ceremony, it somehow just brought back a memory for me of when I was dean and I had to read names together with the other deans. And we one day had a very unusual ceremony. In each of the programs for that day's ceremony, suddenly more than half of the class had cum laudes. Most of them handwritten cum laude. So we conversed amongst ourselves and we decided, you know, maybe it is either an administrative oversight or maybe one of the administrators corrected it. It is supposed to be a cum laude, so we will give the student the benefit of the doubt. Because if he or she does not have it, it will be reflected on their certificate. So it's just for the occasion. And then the one student comes with his card, handwritten cum laude. And I refuse to read it, and he starts arguing with me. Now you write, you spell cum laude C-U-M-L-A-U-D-E. He must have misheard it, because he had written K-O-E-M and louder as in please speak louder.
I think you have to agree we needed to end on that note, but we cannot end any event without having to thank the people that made it happen. So for that, I'd like to welcome Professor Sean Puther, the Acting Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic, who is going to conduct the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Registrar. That was wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed awardees, and all already stated protocols observed, as we near the end of this remarkable evening, it falls upon me to deliver the vote of thanks, a task I approach with some humility and gratitude to be among you all and our awardees. Also with some anxiety, because I know we've overstepped the time and you're anxious to leave. I was advised by the registrar who gave me my brief that the best votes of thanks are like a shooting star, dazzling, memorable, and most importantly, over before you know it. So I'm going to try and aim for that, registrar. But like the video we've just seen, I would be remiss if I didn't take this moment to pay a special tribute to our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dikgang Pretorius. As you've heard earlier on, the holding of this event came about through his thinking and wanting to hold something special to honor these very special awardees like we've had this evening. And as you no doubt by now have seen and understand that under his visionary leadership, our university has flourished over the past decade. And this evening's ceremony, I think, is a reflection of his commitment to excellence and recognition of outstanding contributions. Professor Pretorius, as you prepare your exit of your tenure as Vice Chancellor within a few months. I want to thank you once again, as the first part of this thanks, for your unwavering dedication to the University of the Western Cape. Your legacy will undoubtedly continue to inspire us all. Now to the heart of my thanks. To the awardees, thank you very much for your remarkable contributions, for which you have been so deservedly honored tonight. Your work has not only enriched the fields of scholarship, research, but as we've heard, has made an indelible impact on society. We are proud to count on you this evening as part of our family. To the nominators within the UWC community, thank you for your thoughtful submissions to the Honorary Degrees Committee. Your keen eye for excellence has brought us the distinguished individuals that we have honored tonight. I also want to say a big thank you to my fellow members of the Honorary Degrees Committee, which is a subcommittee of the University's Senate and Council, who meticulously adjudicated the nominations and made the recommendations to Senate and Council. Your continued work is crucial in ensuring the integrity and prestige of these awards. A special mention must go to the moderator of this evening's conversation of the awardees, Professor Sarojini Nada. Your skill in engaging our honorees in the lively and insightful discussion truly brought the achievements to life. Thank you, Sarojini. To our AVS team, I complimented them the other day because they work 5 days, 7 days a week, and they are here tonight ensuring that everything we've seen here not only has been heard in this hall, but has been heard outside the hall with absolute clarity and the professionalism it deserves. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. To the institutional advancement team, your efforts in marketing and communication have made this event a success, ensuring the significance of this event reached a wide audience, together with all of the paraphernalia you see on your tables. Thank you to the IA team. To the University Creative Arts Choir, and I didn't know that our Chair of Council was a founder of this choir, and the Marimba Band. What a performance. Your talents added a beautiful and vibrant energy to tonight's proceedings. I was so glad to see the justices, and the rector a little bit dancing outside. Thank you. A special word to our procurement manager. No doubt, getting an event like this and within the governance structures, we have to follow procurement, Mr. Regal. And your expertise, Nicolene Andy-Patton, is she here this evening? Nicolene, thank you very much for assisting in securing the right caterers and ensuring the seamless procurement of services. It's greatly appreciated. Your behind-the-scenes work made a huge difference. Our thanks also to risk and compliance, infrastructure and engineering. These are the unseen people who make sure that we are in a safe environment, and to the cleaning staff who were here beforehand, who will be here after this evening, whose efforts ensure that we've had a well-organized and immaculate venue. To Ezra Lingerfeld, your entertainment, and I know you're still going to entertain a bit, thank you very much for that. A warm thank you to all of our international guests here and on that side who've traveled from both Europe and the USA. Thank you all for coming in your numbers, for being part of this special occasion. It's made this an enriching, multicultural, and international experience. Finally, to the coordinating team, and I know the rector did thank the coordinating team at the outset. There are very many, and I can't mention you all by name, but your hard work and dedication has not gone unnoticed. And among the coordinating team, I want to single out the commander-in-chief of this group, our registrar, who served so ably as the program director this evening, Dr. Nita Lawton-Mizra. Thank you. Your military, I haven't finished thanking her, your military precision in executing tonight's event, as with most things you do, with an eye to the finer details, was nothing short of exceptional. We are grateful to your leadership and commitment from the Registrar's Office with your team for making this event a reality. It's an immense task, and no doubt the caliber of your team members are such that we've had this evening as such a roaring success. Let's put our hands together for them. On behalf of all present, let me express my heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you who contributed in making this evening a resounding success. Forgive me if I've left anyone out. It's been a night to remember, and it's all because of your collective efforts. Thank you, and good night. Ambani kakushle. Goeienaand. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for an amazing evening. We hope you've had as much fun as we did. Please travel home safely. To those who are staying on in our beautiful country, we hope you make some time to go and see the beautiful flowers. It's flower season. Okay? Have a good evening and safe travels. Thank you.